we had a question come in to our ticketing system, and they were asking about using NinjaTrader's optimizer, right? So if we go to the strategy analyzer, right? So the strategy analyzer has a optimizer feature, right? So you can run a backtest or you can run an optimizer. So if you're not sure what an optimizer is, I'm not going to get into that level of detail because that's really NinjaTrader training, and that can be, learning about how to use the strategy analyzers pretty in depth. So I'm going to leave that up to NinjaTrader to do the training on that. But before we get going, I'll show you where you can get that NinjaTrader training. So they also have videos up on YouTube as well. So let's see. Let's see if I have a YouTube channel up. And no, it doesn't look like I have YouTube up. So let me go to YouTube. So if you just type in NinjaTrader, that should bring up their channel. There we go. So there's their channel. And somewhere they have a bunch of training videos. Let's see. I think it's at the bottom. It used to be at the bottom. Oh, no, here it is. Actually, it's somewhere in the middle now. So NinjaTrader platform training. So in there are some videos on using the strategy analyzer, and I do believe that they do cover the optimizer. So it's been many years since I've gone through these videos, but I'm sure that they're keeping their training the same here. Alright, so that's how you can find get some training on the strategy analyzer and using the optimizer. So I'm going to proceed as if you already know how to use the optimizer. Right. So I'm going to click the optimizer button. We'll pin this here. Let's open this up a little bit. Alright, so it's select Raven. Alright, so right off the bat, Raven is not built to be optimizable. There's really no way to expose your indicator values. So say for example you're backtesting an SMA crossover system. There's no way for Raven to expose those SMA period values in this list. So you can't do a lot of optimization. Really, as we look through this, the couple of things that you can optimize is the profit target and the stop loss, right? So you can see here by these settings, the optimizer can only optimize numeric values. So true false settings cannot be optimized, only numeric values. So that means, basically the optimizer is fairly limited in what you can optimize here. So, I do see that the long and short thresholds are optimizable, but you really don't want to optimize those. That really gets into BloodHound's fuzzy logic capabilities. So most people are not going to want to optimize these values. It's not going to make any difference for the vast majority of people. Well, let me kind of build an example here, and just to demonstrate the optimizing. So before I can do that, I need some kind of a system here to optimize. So let me go back. Let me pull up a chart. Let's see, that's last week's chart. Here we go. Okay, here's a new chart. Alright, so I already have BloodHound on my chart. And so right up on top here is the BloodHound button. So we'll click on this. You'll see it says empty template. And that's because no system has been built and there's no name given to the system yet either. So let's put in today's name. So we're just going to change the date here to the 11th. Alright, so I'm just going to build a very simple crossover system. So I'll just start working on the logic board here. So I'm going to create a new logic. Alright, just going to build a very simple crossover system. And let's see, I already have 2 moving averages on my chart. Let's see, I have an SMA 14 and an EMA 20. So I'm just going to build a simple crossover system using those 2 moving averages. Right. So let's give this a name. So this is the SMA 14 crossing over the EMA 20. Alright, so the SMA 14, right, is already selected for us by default. So we're going to set our indicator A to the SMA 14, and indicator B, we're going to change this to our EMA 20. Let's open up the select indicator window. Grab that EMA, change the period to 20. Alright, so there's a bunch of crossover signals. So we have something to work with here right off the bat. Okay, so I'm going to close the BloodHound file. So I need to close the BloodHound interface before I go back to the strategy analyzer. So this does a couple of things. First of all, closing this kind of eliminates confusion, but more importantly, when I close the interface, it saves all my changes back to the file. Right. So this crossover solver hasn't been saved back to the file yet. So I can either click File and click Save to do that, or I could just simply close the interface and that saves everything back to the file on the hard drive. Okay, so now I can pull up the strategy analyzer now, and so now I can go in and load today's workshop template. I go to File, and you'll see it's going to show up right on the top of the list here. So this is a most recent list, right? So this is going to show you the most recent 20 files here, but by date, right? So this list is sorted by date there. So by the date that the file has been saved. Alright, so there's our crossover solver, and I actually want to use this logic template here. So we'll click OK. So that's selected, and then basically, so now in the strategy analyzer, right, we're running Raven. So we're just going to set everything up like we normally would do as if Raven, was running on our chart. Right, it's kind of the same thing. So let's go. We'll set that to crossover entry. I'm not going to use a limit order. I'm just going to submit a market order just to keep things simple. And let's see, one thing we do need to do, let me stretch this out a little bit, is to generate backtest results. You do need to take start auto enabled on and set that to true. And now you can see the backtest result parameter is now available. Right? So if this is false, there's no backtesting available. Set that to true, and then backtesting will show up. There is some kind of weird little quirk with the strategy analyzer, so I'd recommend taking the chart trader and turning it off when using the strategy analyzer. It's no big deal if you don't, but the chart trader does show up in the strategy analyzer, and it just looks kind of weird. All right, so now getting back to the optimizing part. So let's just throw some values in here to optimize. Actually, I don't want to set these too high because I do want the optimizing to go fairly quickly. Yeah, I'll do something like this. All right. I'll back test against 1 minute bars, and let's shorten up our time period here quite a bit, so we're not waiting around a long time. Okay, we'll just do 1 month of back testing. And let's see, let's optimize against, let's just go against net profit, right? That's what everybody wants, is net profit. All right, that's that. And now we just wait for NinjaTrader to do its back testing. So we can see on the control center, it tells us that it's loading up the data right now. And let's see. Oh, yeah, you know what? I forgot to do something here. All right. Yeah, so if you see this happen, let me get rid of this so I can show you something that should be done when you're using the strategy analyzer, which I didn't do. And let's see if this abort button works. Usually the abort button doesn't seem to do much, but let's give it a shot here. All right, let's just shut down. All right, let's fire this back up. All right, so as soon as this gets brought back up, I'll explain what just happened there. And actually, I'm kind of glad that happened because I really forgot to tell you about this. So when you are using the strategy analyzer, you know, there's another weird quirk with Ninja's data feed engine, and using Raven in the strategy analyzer with your data feed connected will sometimes throw issues. Will, you know, throw up those error messages or cause various issues. So we don't know why. You know, all we can figure out is it has, once again, something to do with NinjaTrader's data feed engine, you know, and it being multi-threaded. So when you do run the strategy analyzer, you do need to be disconnected from your data feed, right? So that's the way you can get Raven to run correctly there. So and so what was happening is, I showed you that NinjaTrader was downloading all the data so it could build, you know, so it could build the one minute charts. Let's see here. Let me get things set back up again. Yeah, there we go. So if you remember, I was backtesting against 1 minute charts. So NinjaTrader had to download all the data for all of these instruments, right? And yeah, you know what? I don't think my data feed has the S&P 500, so that could have been part of the problem. But I know that when NinjaTrader was downloading all the data, you know, Ninja's data feed engine is multi-threaded, so it'll download data, it'll build charts, you know, and all that stuff, and that throws a monkey wrench into the strategy analyzer with Raven. So I'm not sure there's, you know, we've been looking into it, but I don't think there's really much we can do about it. So you know, it's just something that NinjaTrader support won't really give us any help on. But hopefully NinjaTrader 8 has some fixes for this. So, all right. So when you want to backtest, using the strategy analyzer, what we suggest is that you download the data first. All right. So let me just go through and download some ES data here. So there we go. So let me connect to my data feed. And so what we're going to do is go to Historical Data Manager, go to the Download tab, right? And so what we'll do is select all the instruments that we want to backtest against in the strategy analyzer. So we'll we'll download against the ES. And so since I'm downloading against minute data, I need to download or minute bars, I need to download minute data. So right, if you're using volume charts or tick charts or Renko charts, you'll have to download tick data. But I'm just going to download minute data just to keep this going fast. So I don't want to have to sit around for all that tick data to download. And minute data downloads very quickly, but tick data is typically like 4 to 10 times the volume or the amount, so it takes quite a bit longer to download tick data. And let's also download some NQ data, and we'll download some YM data, and we'll download some oil data. Okay, so I've got those. I know that those instruments have all been downloaded, so I can close this out, and now I can disconnect from the data feed. Now let me go back to the strategy analyzer. Alright, so I'm going to load up the template again. Alright, so there's our crossover system. That's good. Set the entry logic, and need to turn the back testing on. So that's on now. Alright, so now I can put in my backtest parameters. Alright, there we go. 1 month of data. And we'll backtest against net profit. Alright, so now since I only downloaded a couple of instruments, you need to select the instrument. So if you don't select something, it's going to download against the whole basket here. Right, and that's just going to take too long. So I'm just going to backtest against these various instruments that I previously downloaded. So let's run against the ES. All right, and if we look at the control center, we can see it's giving us a little progress report, and it says about 2 minutes. So, all right. So it looks like we got some results, and so let's see. So there we go. There's some various results from the optimizer. Right. So I'm not going to go into detail of how to use it or what you should be looking for. That's can be if you guys want to know how to use the optimizer, or how you should be using it, I would suggest, seeking a trading coach, or somebody along that lines. So that that's we're here. So these workshops, and we're here just to train you how to use BloodHound and Raven. So we don't offer advice on using the optimizer, or what settings you should be trading with, or anything like that. We leave that up to trading coaches and financial coaches to give you guys that kind of information. So, but there we go. So basically, just to kind of summarize, using the Ninja's optimizer, really only the profit and the stop loss are the only two things that's optimizable. So I guess I'll throw this out there. Hopefully with BloodHound version 2, we're going to give it a more serious look to see if we can expose more information about your BloodHound system to be optimized, such as what we would like to be able to do, which is really what makes the optimizer powerful. Is we would like to be able to optimize that 14 period on your SMA, and be able to optimize the 20 period on your on the EMA, as an example. That's really what the optimizer is for. So with BloodHound version 2, we'll take a little more serious look into seeing if it's possible to expose those periods to this interface. That's all I can say, is we're just going to take another look at it and see what we can do. Who knows, maybe Ninja 8 has some improvements that makes that possible, but we'll just have to see. So let's see, Don's asking, can I get signals off of the red and green dots on the D3 spotter, and also when they cross the CCI 100 and 200 lines? Let's see. So no. So when an indicator draws a dot on the chart, like here's a dot, or indicators sometimes will draw a diamond, or they'll draw an arrow. So these little chart markers are not readable by indicators. So the indicator has to have either a data series or a bool series that tells that can communicate to BloodHound, that one of these little trade markers, these little trade signals, has fired off. Since there's no more questions, I'm going to continue going down the list of the various function nodes. So last week I covered a couple of the function nodes. Let's see. Yeah, last week I did the look back. So, alright, this week I'll do the signal blocker. Alright. So I'll cover the signal blocker, and then if there's no other questions, I'll cover the heat map for you, Bob. Alright. Okay, so the signal blocker, it's designed, just as the name implies, to block signals. So let me build something here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to use a comparison solver. And that's it. I'm going to compare the SMA 14 to the EMA 20, since I already have those on my chart. Alright, so I have the SMA 14 up here already. I'll just leave that alone. I'll change this to the EMA 20. Alright, change this to 20. And right, So we can see the output here is telling us if the SMA 14 is above or below the EMA 20. Right, so whenever the SMA 14 is above the EMA, right, we're getting a long output. If the SMA is below the EMA, we're getting a short output, right? So we have these continuous signals. So the signal blockers designed that if your system gives you a bunch of signals like this, that you can basically block them and turn them into discrete signals. So you're not getting a lot of trade signals like this, right? So this really comes in handy when you're trying to backtest in Raven. So let's say we threw this into Raven, right? So Raven, would get you along here, and let's just say we set a simple 10-tick profit target. Right, so you're gonna get in, and let's see, where's that? This is the NQ. So our profit target, if we did a 10-tick profit target, it would be approximately right there. Right, so right here, Raven, right, so there's your 10-tick profit, and you'd be flat after that point. But since there's a signal on the next bar, right, if there's a signal on the next bar, if you're using Raven, it's going to put you long again. And right, it's going to put you long again. So you're going to go long for another 10 ticks. Right, so somewhere about there. Right, and so once again, your 10-tick profits hit. So Ravens is kind of constantly, put you in a long position, boom, 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 all the way up. So, so you may not want that kind of behavior. You may want to just go long once at the very, first green bar, at the very first long output. You only want one trade. So that's kind of what the signal blocker can do, is it can help clean up all these continuous signals like this. So let's just do a simple demonstration here. So the first thing you'll need to do is determine how many bars do you need to block the signals for. Right, so by default it's just set to 5. So we can see, if we go back to the chart here, right, we can see, so remember, right here is the arrow, so that was the first long signal that got through after the moving averages crossed each other, right, and then the signal blocker blocked for 5 bars, and then another long signal popped through, blocked for 5 bars, another long signal popped through. So you do have to kind of determine, how many bars do you really need to block for. So maybe we need to block for 50 bars. So we blocked here, and 50 bars later we got another signal. So maybe 50 bars isn't enough. Let's look back and right. Shrink the chart up here. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have very many long runs on the NQ today. Yeah, all right. Well, so basically this is our good example. So, I setting it to 50. Wasn't quite long enough because we still got another long signal in this uptrend, in the same uptrend here. So, you do see that whenever the moving averages cross each other in different directions, that signal does get through, right? So the opposite signal gets through. So, for example, right, we've got a long signal here, and then the moving average is crossed down, and we get an opposite signal, which is the short signal is opposite of the previous long signal, right? So with this signal blocker, we can see that we're getting alternating long and short signals here. And that is controlled by this. There's a setting called block opposite signals, and that's actually turned off. Now, if I turn this to true, before I turn that to true, let me go all the way to the beginning of the chart. Okay, so we're at the beginning of the chart here. Okay, so there's our first long signal. Oh, look at that. 50 bars later, we got another long signal. Let me kind of demonstrate what this block opposite signals will do. So if I turn this on, and oh, sorry, let's see, I need to turn all these resets off here as well. There we go. Okay, so I have all of these various reset inputs turned off here. So we're just blocking for 50 bars, and we're just blocking everything, even opposite signals. So, right, so we get a long signal, we block for 50 bars, we get another long signal. It blocks for 50 bars, and we get another long signal. And we can even see that this long signal doesn't even occur after the moving averages cross each other, right? So this short signal just occurred 50 bars later. Right. So when we're blocking opposite signals, basically we're just blocking everything for 50 bars. So that doesn't have any much practical use, but it's I'm just doing this just to kind of demonstrate what the block opposite signals will do. All right, let's turn this back off. All right, so all my resets are turned off, and we're not blocking opposite signals anymore. So, right, we get our first long signal, and then 50 bars later we get the next long signal, and then when the moving averages cross down, right, we get the first short signal. So now the short signals are going to be blocked for 50 bars, and the long signals are blocked for 50 bars. Let's see, I'm going to draw a couple of arrows here. Alright, so these arrows are 50 bars long. Right, so we can see when this short signal pops up, all short signals are blocked for 50 bars. And to help illustrate this, let's take a look at the original solver that's being fed in here. Right, so with these arrows on here, it's easy to see that. Right, so there's our first short signal, and a bunch of short signals did come in as our moving averages are crossing each other. Right, and then, interesting enough, the very last short signal was 50 bars later. But you can see all of these short signals in between were blocked for 50 bars. So, and once again, that in itself usually doesn't have too much practical use, right? But it just illustrates the basic principle of what the signal blocker is doing. So what really makes the signal blocker practical to use and powerful are all of these various reset capabilities. So when I first showed you the signal blocker, there were a couple of settings that were set to true by default. All right, so let me throw another signal blocker up here. So if we look at this one, right, we can see input opposite signal was set to true as a reset, and also the reset signal was set to true. So yeah, so let me start off by pointing out that if you look at the wording on all of these different reset options, right? If you look at the wording, they all start with the word input, right? Input, input, or they start with the word reset, right? Reset, reset, and this says input, input, reset, and reset. So what that's referring to is, if I zoom in here, right, you can see the signal blocker has a input and a reset, right? It has two different connection points coming in. And so we can see that our solver is connected to the input, right? Connected to the input. So there is nothing connected to the reset, right? So these resets that start with the word reset aren't going to do anything, right? So that starts with the word reset, right? That starts with the word reset, reset. All right, so these settings that start with the word reset, they're not going to do anything because there's nothing connected to the reset point here, right? To that connection point. So right now, only the input connection has the solver connected to it. So only the input resets, only the input settings here will actually have an effect. All right, so let's take a look at this signal blocker over here that has the default settings. You'll notice the one that was set to true by default, it says input opposite signal, right? So let's go back to this signal blocker, and we can see input opposite signal is set to false, and it's set to false, so there's no resetting going on. So let's set this to true, and now you can see that the signal blocker is now acting a little more practical. So every time an opposite signal comes in, so for example, right, we had a we had a long signal come in, and then an opposite short signal comes in right as our moving averages crossed down, right? We had a short signal come in. So this short signal reset the long signals from being blocking, right? So this short signal comes in, it resets the long signals, and then as soon as our moving averages crossed up again, we were able to get this next long signal coming through. All right, so you'll notice that from this long signal to this long signal, it's less than 50 bars, right? And so the reason why this second reset came in is the reason why this second long signal came in is because this short signal reset the signal blocker, right? In other words, it turned the signal blocking off. So when we use the word reset, what we're meaning is that we're turning the blocking off, right? So if there are no resets set to true, right, then the signal blocker is just going to block for 50 bars indiscriminately. So if we do set one of these resets to true, then what that means is that we have the capability to take this 50 bar blocking and actually turn it off when we need to. So that way we can get the next trade signals to come through when we need them to come through. So you'll notice that all of these trade signals coming through, they're always alternating, right? Long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short. And they're always alternating. The reason why they're always alternating is because when an opposite signal comes in to the input, right? So remember, we've got this solver feeding signals into the input. So whenever an opposite signal comes in, it takes an opposite signal to turn off the signal blocking, or to reset the signal blocker. So that's kind of the basic principle of how the signal blocker works, and really now the details just come down to just using and understanding the various reset options here, right? The various reset settings here. Let's see. I guess let me kind of cover some of the terminology here, some of the wording that's used here, right? So an opposite signal refers to, right? So if you're blocking short signals, right? So if the signal blocker is blocking short signals, then the opposite signal would be a long signal here, a long signal. So any of these resets here that have the word opposite signal, so like for example, this says reset opposite signal. So if we use this, if we set this to true, we would have to have something connected to the reset input. Right? We'd have to have something connected to the reset input. So if we're blocking, say, a long signal, then a short signal would have to come into the reset in order to the reset connection in order to turn off the blocking, right? So reset opposite signal means if you're blocking long signals, a short signal has to come into the reset to stop blocking the long signals that come in. Let's see, another terminology that we have is no signal, right? No signal. I'll have to build another solver to demonstrate no signal. Let's see. Right, so this solver, the way this is built is, right, there's continuous signals. There's always signals coming in. But if one of these was ever blank, right, if there was ever a point where there was no output and we were just left, with a black spot, that would be a no signal. Let's see. Let me build something here to kind of demonstrate that. Yeah, all right. Alright, so I'm going to use a threshold solver to generate some signals based on the stochastics here. Alright, so I'm going to look to see when the stochastic is above 75, or below 25. And let's see, I'll build some trend signals here. Okay, so we can see whenever the stochastic is above 75, we're getting long signals, and if it's below 25, we're getting short signals. So yeah, here, let me change those line values here, because right now they're set to 20 and 80, so I'll set them to 75 and 25. Okay, so now we can see the long and short output matches the lines on our stochastic. Right, so we can see that we have these zones in between that have no output or no signal. So that's what we're referring to in the signal blocker. Alright, so when we see the word no signal, that's referring to these areas here where there's no signal coming in. So, yeah, here, actually, yeah, let's do this. Okay, so right now I have input opposite signal set to true. Right, so that gives us just our standard, right, alternating long short signals whenever the moving averages cross each other. So now I have a solver connected to the reset. Right, so I have these signals here, these long and short signals, are what is being fed into the reset. And so we can see we have some points, some bars here where there's no input signal. So the black areas are the no input signal. So what I'm going to do is we'll use this reset no signal. So if I set this to true, you'll see the output looks totally different now. So look at this right here. You see that area there? Right, so that's where the stochastic is in between our two values. So if we look at this solver, right, see there's no signals there. And let's paste this over here. There. So I've marked all the areas where there's no signal. And so we can see that, let's take a look at this. I guess I need to mark more here, so we got more bars. Yeah. All right, so if we're looking at, let me put a little marker up here. So if we're looking at this bar, right, so we got a short signal came through. So if we look at our moving averages, right, our moving averages are crossed down, right? But our threshold solver, if we look at our stochastics here, right, the stochastic is in this area where there was no signal. And so this no signal is what's allowing the short signals, right? The short signals, because our moving averages are crossed down, so that's allowing our short signals to come through. So, so let's take a look at this, right? So this is what's generating the signals to the input. So we can see our moving average is crossed down for this length of time, and then it crosses up for a little bit, and then moving average crosses down. So, and let's see. Yeah, let me set some stuff up to kind of give a better explanation here. So what I'm doing is I'm, setting up some rectangles here to kind of help illustrate, when we have signals and when we don't have signals. So when you start building some complex logic and you're starting to use some of these like the signal blocker and function nodes, you do need to, it's helpful to be able to visualize, what are the signals going into the reset and what are the signals going into the input. Right? It's very helpful to kind of visualize this stuff, so you can so you'll have a clear understanding as to what's going on. So what I'm actually marking, I'm marking the no signal areas for the short output. Right, so these are the no signal areas for the short output. And then up top here, I'm going to mark the areas where there's no signal for the long output. There. Alright, so once again, these squares are marking when there's no signal. So now, going back to the signal blocker, we have reset, no signal. So as we look at these, as we look at the colored rectangles, right, we can see that all of these short signals got through because there was no signal, right? There was no signal coming into the reset. And so it switches from short to long because if we look at our moving averages, right, our moving averages crossed up. And so actually the input signal is what changed here. Right, so if we look at that solver, right, we have, so our moving averages cross down and then it crosses up for a little bit and then it crosses back down. So what we have coming out of the signal blocker, all right, is we get short signals coming out of the signal blocker because there is no signal. Right, there is no signal, which is, so since there's no signal, no short signal going into the signal blocker's reset, it's constantly turning off the signal blocking. So that's why all these short signals get through. And then long signals coming to the signal blocker, right? So when our moving averages cross up, we get all these long signals coming in. And if we look right at our blue-green rectangle, this is telling us that there's no long signals, right? So there's no long signals going into the reset. And so that's what this no signal is doing. So this no signal is what's constantly turning off the signal blocker. So that's why we kind of get these weird results. So once again, that's not very practical, but it's just to demonstrate what the no signal, reset option does. So there are cases once in a while where no signal is needed to reset the signal blocker. So it's not that it's impractical, but I just don't have a practical example for you guys. Let's see. We could use a signal to reset the signal blocker. So, for example, a signal, what would a signal be? So, if we're looking at, what's coming into the input, right? So, if, let's see here. All right. Yeah, so let's take a look here. So we have a long signal, and so we're blocking all the long signals afterwards. So if we're blocking a long signal, then a signal would be another long signal, right? So a signal is the same signal as what's being blocked, right? So we have signals, or we have opposite signals, right? So if we use this reset signal, if we set that on, so what's happening is, let's take a look at, let me stretch this out here. So let's focus on these short signals here. So you see these short signals and these short signals, right? So what happens, our moving averages cross down, and so we get some short signals coming in after our moving averages are crossed down. And yeah, and if we look at our stochastics down here, we can see our stochastics is below 20, right? So we're getting some short signals here. So our stochastic solver is generating some short signals, right? So that's going to be, so remember, where there is no rectangle, that means we are getting signals coming in. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at this solver that's connected into the reset. Right, so there's the signals coming in from our stochastics being below 20, and here's another area being below 20. So we have short signals coming into the reset, which is turning off the signal blocker, and so that's why we get all of these short signals coming through. And over here we get all these short signals coming through. Right, so our stochastic is below 20, which means we have short signals coming into the reset. Right, so we're talking about these short signals here coming into the reset, and right, since we have reset signal set to true, that means whenever a signal of the same direction comes into the signal blocker's reset connection point, that's going to turn off the signal blocking, right? And so that's why all of these short signals come through. So All right, see what else can I cover here. Yeah, interesting enough. This is kind of a neat little debug feature. So this output here, you can the signal blocker can generate an output when it's actually blocking signals. So let's set this up here. Let's turn this back off. All right, so we have a bunch of bars where signals are being blocked, right? Because we only have long, short, long, short. So this blocked output is kind of helpful for kind of understanding how your signal blocker is working, how it's set up. So if I want, so I can set this to 0.2, something low like 0.1 or 0.2. And you can see that, right, we're getting this little tiny output here. So that little tiny output is helpful in telling us when the signal blocker is actively blocking signals. So I can see that, like right here in the middle of the chart, it's actively blocking short signals, but it's not blocking long signals. Right? It's no longer blocking long signals. And then when a long signal comes in, then it begins to actively block the long signals. Right? But it's no longer blocking the short signals. Right? So, and in this case it doesn't need to block long signals coming in, because there are no long signals coming in, right? If we take a look at that. If we take a look at what's coming in, right? We got this one. Let me shorten this up here. We got this one long signal, and then we get a bunch of short signals, right? So we had this one long signal, and then there was only short signals. So the long signals didn't need to get blocked, but the short signals did need to get actively blocked. Right. So yeah, if you're trying to understand, when the signal blocker is blocking stuff and when it's not, that's when this blocked output becomes handy. So, yeah, I think that pretty much covers the basics of the signal blocker. What it's doing, is not very complicated. It's just blocking signals for 50 bars. The only part that does get complex is deciding which of these resets you actually need to use and which ones you don't want to use. So, yeah. And if you need help with the signal blocker, you're always welcome to send your questions in to us into the support email, and it's going to be very, very critical that you also send us screenshots. So if you need help figuring out what signal blocker reset settings to use, it's critical that you send us in screenshots. First of all, we need to see the signals that are going into the input. So we need to see a screenshot of this. And if you think you need to use a reset, then we need to see a screenshot, of your reset signals as well. And of course, an explanation of what you're trying to do. So when you send in a screenshot, of the signals that you want to block, we need a detailed explanation of what exactly you're wanting to block, when and where and why, stuff like that, and we can help you figure out which of these reset options you need to use. So well, hopefully you guys didn't fall asleep. I know this gets these reset options do get fairly technical, but once you look at it for a while, you realize it's not really all that complex. It's just a bunch of it's really a couple of key items with multiple settings of those items, right? So you have two inputs, right? You have the input and the reset, so you have two connection points, and then you have either a signal, a no signal, or an opposite signal coming in, right? So that's three combinations: signal, opposite signal, or no signal. So there's three combinations, and then you have two connection points, right? So with all that, when you combine all those things, it creates all of these, multiple reset capabilities. So that's really what these all kind of come down to, is just those five different options, right? You have an input and a reset connection point, and then you have signal, no signal, and opposite signal. So it just kind of comes down to, once you realize that it's really just those five things, then understanding what each of these options is doing becomes a lot more clear to you. So, and all right, so Don's asking, how do you send screenshots? Good question, Don. So what we recommend, if we ask people for screenshots, we always recommend a company called TechSmith. So they make a free little tool that you can mark up charts with. So the software is called Jing. So if you do a little search for Jing, right, search for Jing, you'll see right there's the top, TechSmith, Jing, free screenshot and screencast software. So you can download Jing. It is totally free, and what Jing lets you do is take a screenshot. So I can actually, this isn't Jing, I have the full-fledged version. They have a full-fledged screenshot software called I can't think of it right now. Snagit. There we go. It's called Snagit. So I actually have the full-fledged paid version called Snagit, and you can see, right? So Jing looks a lot like this, but it doesn't have all these capabilities. But what Jing does have is, once you take your screenshot like this, Jing does have some very simple tools here. It does have some simple tools, so you can draw an arrow, you can type in, some text here. So you do have these capabilities with the free version. And then if you go to share, Jing has this share capability, and you can upload stuff to screencast. So I can click the screencast upload button. Let's see. Oh, I guess I don't have my account set up. Yeah. So in order to upload stuff, you do have to create an account on Screencast, which is free as well, and it'll upload it, and then you're left with a URL. So in that, let's see. Yeah, here we go. I can give you a demonstration, I think. Yeah. So what it does is, when you get the screencast, when you get your account set up and you have a screencast working, it'll upload it, and then it will put a web link in your let's see here. I guess I can't show it to you. Yeah, my VMware's not working. Yeah, darn. Well, in any case, that's something that you'll have to learn. It is a really easy tool to learn how to use, and I'm sure that you guys can figure out how to use it. I'm not able to show you all the features, but it's very handy. So, and then you can share that link with us, or or you can also save the file out, right? You can save the file and then attach it to your email when you send your question in. So, yeah, with that, have a good weekend, and I hope to see you guys next week. All right, bye-bye, guys.